Hi everybody. Okay, in this video we will look at an exercise from the Escuela Oficial del Idiomas. If you remember, last week we did the first part of the reading and today we will do the second part. It's a comprehension. Okay, so I will share the screen and you can see on the left the document from the Escuela Oficial del Idioma from Andalusia. Okay, so if you remember last week we did the first exercise, which was here, independence on ice. So if you remember the vocabulary from last week, and the video is on Facebook for the analysis. So this was the first part where you have to select the correct letter in the space, independence on ice. So we finished this and it was C1 from the C1 level. Now this is the second task, the second exercise, and the title is from Evelyn Wow's Brideshead Revisited. Okay, I've never read the book, I don't know the book myself, but the level is very, very good and some difficult vocabulary, difficult expressions. And here you have 0. Let me move my picture so you can see. So it's necessary, you have number 0, you have one question, his feelings, his sentiments about the camp. So in relation to the context of the article, the camp, I think is the military camp for the soldiers. And you have option A, B, or C. And the first one, they give you the answer C because it's an example. And that's the correct answer for C. They were confirmed in time. His feelings were confirmed, okay? So you have the idea, number 1, the soldiers would arrive at camp, and then you have A, B, C. Number 2, A, B, C. 3, A, B, C. 4, A, B, C, etc. all the way to number 8. Okay, and the text is here. So there are 2 pages of the text. This is the first part from the extract from the book, and you can see it's just a good level of English. So there's 1 page and there is a second page. Okay, so you can see the website here also if you want to copy and paste and maybe to look yourself, to try the exercise yourself first, and then you can check this video for the analysis. Okay, so again, that's the second page and this is the first page. And the questions are at the top. Okay, so each person is different and each person has a different preference for the way to do the reading. Some people prefer to read the text first and then the questions. Other people prefer to read the questions first and then the text. In my opinion, I think definitely to analyze the questions first is very, very important. You need to understand clearly the questions and the significance and the feeling of the question before you read the text, in my opinion. Okay, because you keep in mind all the time when you're reading the text the questions and the possible answers. Okay, but it's your choice. You can do whatever you want, of course. So yes, this is the first part. So I will show you my notes here. So this is exactly the same. This is page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 6 pages and we're back to the start. On the left, we have word reference if we need to look for vocabulary. And on the bottom, we will have my notes for extra vocabulary and comments and grammar and everything, okay? So the first part, the soldiers, so the first word is very important. I know it's very basic, but soldados, okay? So soldados are soldiers. And remember, this is level C1, but I know other people have different levels, so I hope everybody can learn a little from the video, okay? So soldiers would arrive at the camp fast asleep is very good vocabulary. So it means completely asleep or totally asleep. It's very conversational, it's very native, it's very comfortable. But when you're learning English, maybe it's difficult to understand. Fast is rapido and asleep is the combination. So fast asleep, the opposite is wide awake, and that means totally awake, and the opposite is fast asleep, which means totally or completely asleep. So it is very, very good. Fast asleep is completely asleep. Half dressed is logical, so it's not completely dressed, it's a little bit dressed, it's half dressed. On foot is very important, because in English we say by car, by plane, by train, by bus, by bicycle, but the only exception is on foot. Always, always, always on foot. Okay, on foot. For example, I traveled to the center on foot. Very, very important, very irregular, and it's a classic trap. It's a classic issue for the Cambridge exams and for all exams, really. So that's the irregular on foot, but we say by car, by plane, by bus, by train. They're the most typical, but the irregular is on foot. Very important, fundamental. And the question 2, war, had space, the countryside, el paisajo. Okay, so war, guerra, had something, the space, had A, B, C, the countryside. Made no difference to the countryside. Preserve, like maintained, protected the countryside, or ravaged the countryside. So to verb is to ravage, and it's like to destroy. A synonym probably destruir, to destroy. And very good vocabulary, had ravaged the countryside. So probably in your mind, in relation to war, it's probably negative and possibly ravaged, but we don't know for certain until we read the text. Okay. The third one, the lunatic asylum. So the lunatic asylum gave its, that's possession, residents undeserved leisure, ocio in Espanol, undeserved, merecer, pero negativo, unmerecer, ocio. Trigger, very good vocabulary. So in relation to the pistol or the gun, you have the trigger, gatillo, I think gatillo. So the trigger is the gatillo, and it's a verb in English as well, to trigger, like causar, similar to causar, to trigger the situation, to trigger the problem. So to trigger is like the verb, and a trigger is a gatillo, I think, in Espanol. Just to be sure with the spelling, I will check here for you. Gatillo, yes. And there is an expression, trigger happy, is interesting. Que dispara ante les más trigger happy. It's a famous expression as well, but not in this context. Okay, so gatillo is the verb here. And grim. So see, the lunatic asylum was a grim place to be. Grim is very dark, very sad, very depressing. It's typical with the weather. The weather is very grim. The weather is very dark. And we have a few other synonyms here. Grim. You can say dull, dark, depressing. So very good for your vocabulary, to increase your vocabulary. Very grim. And it was a sad, depressing place to live. Number 4, the men's attitude to their superiors showed how much their morale had improved, how much they disliked hard work, or how much they longed for action. Okay, so long is largo, but here it's a verb, to long for. Very good verb. And it's like to desire a lot. Okay, so if you long for a holiday, it means you desire a holiday, you really want the holiday. You're longing for your partner, it means you really desire your partner, you want to see your partner, or your family, you long for your family. So it's related to a long time, un tiempo largo, and it's very advanced and very creative English, and very important to remember. Okay, here they desired action, they wanted action, they longed for action. Okay, so difficult questions, because you really need to understand the men's attitude to their superiors. You need to identify the attitude, and then you need to understand if the attitude showed if they wanted action, if they disliked working, or if their morale had improved. So very difficult question. And in this video, I don't specifically have the correct answers, but I will just focus on the vocabulary, focus on the expressions, and focus on the grammar in this particular video, okay? And we can maybe keep in mind the questions when we're looking at the body of the text. Okay, so number 5, the writer felt, como sentir in the past irregular, felt that his fellow officers, como compañeros, okay, compañeros, the workmates, the teammates, the fellow officers, were hard, difficult to identify with in relation to a personality, to identify with a person, to identify with. Felt that his superiors were not properly qualified. Okay, so it's a difficult question because you need to identify the feeling of the writer. Very difficult, and for native speakers, these types of exercises usually are problematic, usually are difficult, so it's a difficult exercise and very tricky, the reading comprehension in all exams. Okay, his awareness, consciente, his awareness of aging, very important verb. Okay, age is edad in Espanol and substantivo, noun, but in English there is a verb to age, and it's like to get older. That's the significance, to age or to get older. So it's a verb, and here it's the adjective of the verb. Okay, so his awareness of getting older, of becoming older, so it's el verbo in gerundio, is evident in his health problems. Okay, so health, you need to be careful between the adjective and the substantivo. So health is the noun and healthy is the adjective. Sanidad in Espanol, sanidad I think is health, and sano is healthy. So a difference, sanidad, health, and sano, healthy. Okay, and he had health problems, inability to sleep, or need for the routine. Okay, so very complicated question. So this is the reason I think you need to be very clear with the questions before you read the text. That's my opinion for sure, because it's a difficult job to comprehend and to understand the question. Okay, the writer was not excited about the move because he had been given, so that's the passive, had been, the verb to be in the auxiliary, given the participle, a great deal of information. So that's a good combination. A great deal is como mucho, muchísimo. A great deal of time, a great deal of energy, great deal of food, muchísimo. Okay, so a great deal of is like a lot, really, really, really a lot. Okay, so I have a great deal of patience for this person. I have a great deal of time for somebody, a great deal of, very important and good combination, similar to a lot of, but really a lot of. Okay, so number 7, the thing that made the writer consciente, aware, his attitude had changed, was checking tasks on a to-do list. Okay, and just before we continue, number 5, I see B, failing is fallar. So the verb fallar in the past continuous. Okay, number 7, yeah, consciente, checking tasks, tareas, on a to-do list. Very good vocabulary. So a to-do list is un lista con cosas para hacer. Okay, so you have a to-do list. It's your itinerary, it's your agenda, shopping, work, meeting, driving. So there's lots of things that's to do. A lista para hacer, to-do list. Okay, so it's one word, substantivo, one word, a to-do list. We also have a bucket list, which is different. So the bucket list is the list of things you want to do before the person dies. So the bucket list is your dreams, the things you want to do before you die, for example. So that's the bucket list. So very different. Overhearing, again, over and hear. So the verb is to hear and the prefix is over, but we have the verb to overeat, to oversleep, to overdrink, to overdo, I think we saw last week, and it's excess, everything in excess. Okay, everything. So para hacer algo en exceso, beber algo en exceso, overdo, overeat, oversleep, dormir en exceso, y también comer en exceso. But over here is a little different, okay? So the verb to overhear is when you hear in the restaurant at the table, you hear something with no intention to hear. So you're speaking with your friend and the other people are speaking very, very loud and you have no intention to listen or to hear the conversation, but yes, you overhear. So it's more the preposition in this case. It's not exactly excessive. It's more, well, it is excessive because they are speaking excessively and you can hear, overhear. Very important verb and very important context. So they were overhearing the whispers, very important vocabulary. So to be sure with the whisper here is murmurar, susurrar. Okay, so very good vocabulary in the bedroom. So you can imagine they're overhearing the people speaking very slowly in the bedroom, okay? Or recalling his first love affair, aventura, romantic aventura, I think his love affair. Okay, and number 8, the writer was not excited about the move because he had been given a great deal of information, no problem. And B, he was aware that the safety precautions had been taken. Again, the passivo, the verb to be, plus taken in the participle. This sort of activity, very important vocabulary like type or kind, this sort of activity had become convertirse, or llevar a ser, practically routine. Okay, so here we go. This is complicated vocabulary, very difficult. And remember, it's not necessary for you to understand everything in the exam. No, it's not necessary for you to understand everything, but your job in the exam is really to identify the answer. So even when you're doing this today, your job really is to focus on the answer and to focus on the specific question and answer, okay? But for me, and as the teacher, I want to show you the vocabulary, the grammar, and the important points in relation to the teaching and grammar and everything, okay? Okay, so the first part, when I reached, so it's como alcanzar, and like arrive, it's a synonym for arrive. So when I reached C Company in relation to the military, which were at, so position for the hill, at the top of the hill, and the hill specifically is colina, montaña, so similar to the mountain, the preposition at the top of the mountain, at the top of the hill. I paused and looked back at the camp, just coming into full view, abajo, below me, a través, through the grey mist. Okay, so mist is very important vocabulary in relation to the weather, and the mist is neblina, okay? Similar to fog, so we have the mist and the fog. Okay, so good vocabulary for weather, and here it's very grey. So you remember the question we had, grim, similar to grim, of early morning. We were leaving that day when we marched in 3 months before. The place was under snow. Baja nieva. Oh, sorry, so under snow, like Madrid and Spain this weekend. It's under snow. Okay, and there is an expression in the passive, to be snowed under. That is an expression, to be snowed under, when you're covered in snow or have a lot of work also. You're very, very busy. Muy ocupado. Hasta los ojos también in español, okay, to be snowed under. Okay, so the first leaves, so you need to be careful here. It looks similar, parecer como dejar, pero no es dejar. Here it's in relation to the tree, and you have the leaves of the tree. So specifically, the vocabulary here is singular, is hoja, exactly. So an hoja, singular, is a leaf. I'm going to write here, singular, and plural is without the F and with the V-E-S, okay, so plural. That's the difference. So a leaf is hoja, and plural are leaves in Espanol, hoja. Okay, very good vocabulary. And here, so the first hojas, the primeros hojas of spring were unfolding. Okay, so fold is doblar in Espanol, doblar, pero unfolding is like the opposite to unfold. Very good creative vocabulary, colorful vocabulary. and it's also like appearing. So if the leaves are appearing, or crecer, growing or appearing, okay, has this synonym in this context. I had reflected then that whatever scenes of desolation lay ahead, so very important, lay, there is a verb in English to lie, has two significances. The first one is mentir, which is completely different in this case. So the first significance is mentir, and the second significance here is entumbarse. Okay, so in Espanol here, entumbarse is the verb to lie, and I think lay is the past. And there is a similar verb to lay, is like to poner, okay? So for example, to lay your head is poner tu cabeza. So a little tricky and very important for the advanced, very important for proficiency levels. And in all aspects, it's important to know the difference between to lie and to lay, okay? And here, lay ahead in the future. So the problems that lay ahead in the future. I never feared, okay? So the verb is to fear. Miedo, okay? The substantivo is a fear, miedo, pero es como tener miedo, okay? Here's the verb as the past simple. I never feared one more brutal than this, and I reflected now that I had no single happy memory for me. Here, love had died. That's the past perfect. So you need to be clear with the difference in the verb to die, morir, to die. The past is died in the past simple, died, and the participle is died as well. But the adjective is dead, and the substantivo is death. So it's a complicated structure, a family, complicated family, and I will write here. So the verb is to die, verbo, substantivo is death, pronunciation, and the adjective is dead. Okay, so very important as well. And then the past simple is died, the past simple. So you need to be very clear with the family of the verb to die, and that's the past perfect, the auxiliary have, and the participle, as you know. Here, the tram lines, just good vocabulary in relation to the tram, and probably the same in Spanish, the tram. Tranvía. Okay, so tranvía, teleférico. Okay, tranvía. And the tram line, so that's the good combination. Ended, so that is como then, entonces. Men returning fuddled from Glasgow. So that's very colorful vocabulary, very creative, and it's like confused. So if you are fuddled, you are confused. It's not very typical, but it's just colorful vocabulary, okay? So fuddled is like confused and not very common. Okay, from Glasgow, could doze, very good verb, okay? So the verb to doze is similar to sleep, and there's a phrase of verb to doze off is to fall asleep, like a little nap, more like a little nap. So it's not a deep sleep, it's not a big sleep, it's a little sleep, okay? So to doze off is fall asleep. Sorry with the question mark. And there's an adjective as well, which is interesting. Dozy is a negative attitude. It's like a tonto, a persona or person tonto. Adjective, okay. So yeah, dozy is a little negative, like an insult. So if it's a dozy person, it's like a sleepy person, and it's not very polite and it's not very nice. But the verb to doze up is like to fall asleep, a little sleep. And here's the same in the train. The soldiers, confused, could sleep for a little in their seats until roused. Okay, so to rouse somebody, very colorful vocabulary again, very advanced vocabulary, is like specifically, I'll get the translation here. It's like animar, similar to animar, incitar alguien, provocar. Yes, like to provoke by the journey's end. So they were provoked or woken up by the end of the journey. There was some way to go from the tram stop to the camp gates, 1/4 of a mile, in which they could button their blouses. So very good, button is the substantivo, but también it's a verb. And for example, the shirt has the button, and the verb is to button. Okay, so I button my shirt. And there's an informal expression, button it is like cállate. Okay, so button it is like with a mouth, and it's like to shut up. a bit informal maybe. Okay. So good vocabulary and very important to know. So somebody says button it, and it's like to shut up, cállate. Okay. Blouse. So just so I think it's similar in Espanol. A blouse is a blusa. Yeah. And straighten. Okay. So straight is the adjective. Recto in Espanol, adjective recto. But the verb is to straighten. So when you have the en, often, frequently, it's the verbo. Okay. So to straighten your back, and it's an important verb. Okay. And here, straighten their cap. So the kappa, to fix the cap, to straighten the cap before passing the guard room, quarter of a mile, in which concrete gave place to. So to give place to is like to replace. Okay, so to give place to is more formal and more creative. Again, it's like to replace. So this article is quite colorful. It's very interesting vocabulary. And for this reason, I think it's important to show and to teach the vocabulary in this sense. So just remember that it's quite advanced and quite colorful vocabulary, but very, very good. Okay, and the road's edge. So the edge is very important as well in English. Edge specifically is borde, ventaje. Yeah, I think borde is perfect. So for the borde of the road, the edge. Very, very useful and very flexible word in English, el borde, the edge. Very common and very flexible. Housing estate, just good combination and good vocabulary. Like in Espanol tienes urbanización. Okay, and urbanización is like a housing estate. Sorry for my Spanish. So good combination in English. And the hinterland is the area around the city. So specifically, it's like suburbios, similar to suburbios, but specifically más. So it's interior of el país. Okay, so nobody lives there. It's the empty area, the hinterland. Okay, so the camp stood, the verb to stand is the past simple. So the verb to stand, the verbo, and stood is the past, irregular. And there's a phrasal verb as well, destacar, to stand out, very important. Also like sobresaliente, because you can say sobresaliente, outstanding, sobresaliente. Okay, sobresaliente. Okay, so stood is the past. The camp stood in the position, like in tumbarse, where until quite recently, lately, bastante is quite, and lately is recently, had been pasture and plough land. So in relation to agriculture, in relation to the granja and the farm, there's a verb to plough, and plough specifically here is important, and the verb is labrar, rotarar. Okay, so the plough land is the area of the agriculture where they change the agriculture, change the crops. Okay, so the crops is the vocabulary, the products, that's the plough land. Okay, so again, fold we have in the next one, stood in a fold, doblar. And just to remind you, the verb is to fold, and the substantivo is a fold, and fold of a hill. So it's in relation to the montaña or the colina, and it's the fold of the hill. Very descriptive vocabulary and a little bit difficult. Had service for battalion officers. Ivy still supported part of what had once been there. So ivy is like the tree or the type of plant. Yedra, very important vocabulary, ivy. And in the United States, they say the Ivy League college. So it's like the most important college, but very, very good vocabulary, okay? Acre, I think it's similar in Spanish. It's in relation to the quantity of land, okay? So now I will just identify on the vocabulary instead of reading everything, just to show you the key parts. The wash house, okay, it's the casa para levantar, sorry, wash house. Wash is lavar, yeah, okay, so the wash house. And the orchard good vocabulary as well. I think it's orchid in Espanol. The place had marked for destruction before the army came to it. Had there been, okay, this is a very complicated structure and it's very advanced, and if you can use this very well, it's a big advantage and it's very impressive if you can use this structure. Had there been another year, it's like if there was. Okay, so had there been is very similar to if there was. Very, very similar and very important. So obviously if there was is very basic. Yes, it's a little advanced also, but had there been is definitely more important, more impressive, and more proficient, and very important to remember. And here, another year of peace, there would have been. So this is a combination. Like, yes, it is a type of conditional, but it's very colorful, very fluent, and very, very fluent and advanced, really. So take your time to try and understand this structure, but they're combined. There would have been no farmhouse, no wall, no apple trees, okay? Already half a mile of concrete road lay, it's the same from before, between the bare clay, okay? So bare is very important. It's like desnudo. So bare is like desnudo. We can say bare hands, bare feet, the bare wall, adjective. Okay, so I think we need a hyphen here. The bare hands is like the naked hands, the bare hands, bare feet. Okay, but different in the other verb to bear. So very similar in pronunciation, bear and to bear, but completely different. Okay, so completely different verbs. And just to remember the spelling and the difference. Okay, so here it's like empty, desnudo in relation to the farm, and the clay banks, the banks of clay, specifically clay, is barro, like muck or mud. Okay, so the vocabulary for clay, we can say muck, mud, and clay. All very, very similar. I think clay is maybe more typical in the United States, perhaps, but really the three are very necessary and important to know. Okay, and a checker open of ditches. So either side, a checker of open ditches. So first, a ditch is the area. Imagine the road. You have the road in the countryside, and at the side of the road is the ditch. It's the place for maybe water. So you have the road and the ditch is on the side. It's no benefit. It's no use. It's under. Okay, so I'll get you the translation here. A ditch. For the substantivo, yes, zanja, cuneta. Okay, so very good vocabulary, but I want to tell you about the verb to ditch. There is a verb to ditch, and it's like to throw away. So to ditch, it's a little informal, perhaps informal. So to ditch your friends would be obviously very, very bad. To ditch your career, to ditch your job, it's like to leave, dejar. But it's the same if you're in the car and with the basura, a very bad thing to do when people tirar la basura into the ditch, it's very, very bad. But in English, it's a flexible verb to throw away something that was important for you or good for you, to ditch your career, to ditch your job. Okay? So very important for vocabulary, for conversation. And checker is, I think, specific vocabulary in this case. Checker in relation to the land, so it's not this one, not this one. No, I don't think there is. I don't know exactly the significance here of this, but I think in Spanish, so you know the significance of the meaning. Checkers, fija. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what they mean here, but the ditch is the most important for me in that sentence. Okay. Okay, and the next one's very important as well, a system of drainage. And there is a verb to drain. And in the introduction yesterday, we had an expression, a brain drain, like extraer, to extract. And, okay, so it's similar to extract, a synonym to verb. And a drain is the substantive. Okay, so I'll try to make this a bit smaller so you can see everything. Very important. So in the house, you have the roof, the techo, and you have the drain. So the drain is the product that collects the water and moves the water. That's the drain pipe, okay? And in English, to drain is like extract. And the drainage is the substantivo, so a system of drainage. Very good vocabulary and very interesting, okay? So another, remember, another is for singular, another year, but other would be for years. Would have made this part of the neighborhood suburb. Now the huts, okay? So hut is interesting vocabulary. It's like a little shed, refugio, choza, cabana. That's the best one for me. So a little cabin, okay? So a hut is a synonym for a cabin, in my opinion. A hut and a cabin. Very, very similar. And here's the same in relation to the farm and the land. The huts where we had wintered. Okay, so winter is in winter specifically, sorry, as you know, is invierno, okay? But there is a verb not typical to winter no, it's not typical, definitely not typical, but it's creative, and in this sentence it's definitely creative. So had wintered is the past perfect, waited esperar in the past and participle, their turn. So to wait your turn is a good combination, okay? And the next part 4, I'll make it bigger so you can maybe see it. Hopefully you have no problems with the size of the text. When you turn your telephone, you can see everything, I think. Okay, half hidden. Hidden is escondido, and half hidden is very good vocabulary. So the verb is to hide, esconder. Hid is the past, and hidden is the participle. So to hide, verbo. Hid, past simple, irregular. And also we have hidden is the participle. So very good vocabulary. Esconder in Espanol, hide, hid, and hidden. So half hidden, even in the winter, by its embossoming trees. Very colorful, very proficient English, and not very typical. Again, so just to give you the best translation, embossoming. Okay, no, sorry, embossum. I don't know if there is a translation because I've never seen that word myself. If I get the spelling correct, that would help, I think. No. So just to show you maybe this word, a bosom, so you can be clear what it is. Pecho, yeah, okay. So it's something related to that context, and you can see the prefix is em, and it's also in the gerundio. So it's the adjective, adjetivo aquí, okay? Lay, the same as before. Cast iron, okay? So iron is the material, and cast iron is, I don't know if they have the translation here. Yes, cast iron is a type of metal, colado or fundido, okay? In relation to sport, or if something is definite or something is certain, you can say it's a cast iron penalty. That's typical in football, typical in penalty in sports. Cast iron penalty is like an absolute penalty, for sure. Sin duda, no doubt, okay? And here it's the type of a railing. And a railing is very specific vocabulary. In the house, in the garden, you have the railing. So you have a fence of madera, a wooden fence. Okay, so a wooden fence, but you can have a metal fence. And when it's a metal fence, normally we say the railing. Okay, so the wooden fence, and just to show you what a fence is, I remember this word from before, mbaya, okay? But when it's metal, specifically when it's metal, we normally say a railing, okay? And maybe in the stairs, when you're walking up the stairs, you hold the railing. So the railing is what you hold on the stairs when you're going up and going down. Okay. Noble, it's a type of vocabulary for the gates, so very specific. I don't really know exactly what a noble gate, maybe elegant, very royal gate. Put our rough wire, so rough is important vocabulary. The opposite is tidy or clean. So if somebody is dressed very rough, it's very untidy, maybe very dirty. And here, rough wire is the same. It's the opposite of clean, the opposite of pretty, the opposite of tight. And the expression here is to put something to shame. Okay, so this is the key. Put something or somebody to shame. Let me write, because it's valor para recordar. To put somebody, poner alguien para vergüenzar, to shame, to embarrass. Okay, so very good structure. To put somebody to shame is to embarrass somebody. Okay, so to embarrass somebody, and I think you can see that there. Okay, good. That's the key structure, to put, poner, to put somebody to shame. Okay, Clement days, very advanced, very colorful vocabulary, and I think probably similar in Spanish. I'm sure, yeah, okay, in types of the weather. Sauntering, okay, very, very good vocabulary. Sauntering and skipping. Okay, so the verb is to saunter, and it's similar to walk very confidently or very comfortably. And skipping is good vocabulary as well. For example, in boxing, you have the rope and you have the skipping rope. So it's a type of movement. It's not walking. It's a more typical with the children, when the person is happy and they jump and they skip. So it's very important vocabulary here. For you, skip is like saltar, okay? But also we have another context in relation to the disco. To skip the cue is como saltar la línea. I think it's the same in Spanish, okay? In relation to the music, you skip the music. So it's like saltar, jump. Okay, among is like con, among or with. The trim is like delgado. Gravel is like a type of stone. And specifically gravel here is grava, gravia, very similar. So trim is like very slim, delgado, no fat, the opposite. Pleasantly, very nice, very comfortably. Planted lawns, okay, so a lawn is a grass, type of grass, and lawn is césped. But here is a very important vocabulary, a lawn mower. So the lawn is the grass, the tennis lawn, but then we have the lawn mower, okay, and there is a verb in English to mow, and it's like to cut. Only really for the grass and for the military in relation to the to shoot, como tirar somebody. So to mow down the plane is like to shoot, tirar, to shoot, similar in that context. So they're the two real contexts. Okay, and here it is the lawn, the grass, planted grass. Give up is rendirse. Struggle is como pelea. It's very important in English. To struggle is to fight or to have difficulty. Give up is rendirse. Duty is your obligation, all your duties done. The undisputed heir, so the pronunciation is heir, it's the person who receives the property or who receives the wealth or who receives the position. They are the heir. And in England or in the kingdom, in Spain, they would, or anywhere, they would say the heir to the throne. Okay, so very good expression. And there is a verb that's important as well, to inherit. Okay, and at their ease is another good one as well. So here, the ease is the substantive, very important. The adjective is easy. And there is a verb that's very key to ease, okay? So this is the verb, to ease. And I'll give you a few examples that are key. So after the weekend, you want to ease into the week. So you want to be very calm. You want the start of the week to be very simple, very easy. Okay, so to ease into is to start something easily in the adverb. Okay, so to start something easily. Very, very good. And the final expression that is very common is in this text, at your ease. Okay, so at your ease is whenever you want, or do what you want. Just be calm, be at your ease. Okay. And I think it's the same, in exactly the same context in this sentence. You can see here enjoying the heritage whenever they want. No pressure, no stress, at their ease. Used to, so that's in something you did in the past, a very good structure. Used to go, used to eat, something you did in the past, but not anymore. Then through the railing. So it's related to verb shout, the preposition here, gritar, a través. Okay, so gritar a través, the railing. So again, very good vocabulary. Chum, so keep a bed warm for me, chum. Chum is like tío, amigo, friend, pal, buddy, so very informal, but friend, pal, buddy, mate, chum, all probably informal, but have the same significance as caballero, tío. Yeah, so you know the situation, and I'm sure you understand. Okay, so very good. And it is as well, to be chums or to be best friends, like really good friends. Good vocabulary. Okay, really good friends, and it shows a good level. If you can use it appropriately, it shows a very good level. Okay, I shan't is very old and very old, really English and formal English. I will not belong. I shan't belong is I will not. So it's like shall not belong. I shan't belong. And not very common, probably not a good idea to use it in the wrong context, obviously, but important to recognize here. The platoon is related to the military. It's the type of group in the military. Grudge is very interesting, okay? So if you have a grudge, it's like a problem with somebody. If you have a grudge against somebody, it's like a bad feeling or a bad sentiment against somebody. And a grudge, to hold a grudge, is the very famous rancor, very famous expression, and it's also typical with the verb to hold a grudge, very famous. You hold a grudge against somebody, and it is to begrudge as well. You would not to begrudge somebody is interesting also. So very important, family, and here it's very good context. They say grudge them their life of privilege. Okay, in this case it's not so typical, but definitely it's worth remembering. To hold a grudge and to have a grudge, it's negative. Midwinter, I brought, so the verb to bring, traer, in the past irregular. The word had gone round, very good expression. Palabra, como rumores, chisme. The word had gone round, so it circulated. The gossip had circulated, maybe negative, maybe positive, or maybe just communication, maybe no gossip, just communication. The moors, in relation to the land, okay, so the moor are specifically paramo, brethal, so again, advanced specific vocabulary. The dockland, okay, so the docks is the place in the city that receive, like the port, very, very similar to the port. For example, Dublin is a big city with the port, and the dock is the area around the place where the ship and the boat comes in. Okay, and for example, in Dublin we have Grand Canal docks. People who are familiar with Dublin will remember Grand Canal docks. And to dock is the action. When the boat enters the port, that's to, and stop, para, that's to dock. In relation to the Apple and the iPhone, you have the charger, the dock is the place where you put the iPhone, okay? And the vocabulary is the docks, and a docker is the person who works in the docks, okay? So a docker, I don't know why they have the line here. Okay, so I don't think it's a capital, but the docker is the person who works in the ship, loading and unloading the ship and the product, the dockers. Okay, and that's the dockland area. At last is finally, snuff is very interesting. So it's like welly, wellar. So to sniff is a verb, typical with the dog, a sniffer dog. And you have a different one as well. You have a sniffle, is like influenza, a flu. But snuffed is the past irregular. Okay, and sniff, just so you're very clear, the verb to sniff is oler, smell. Okay, so it's a form, they say a quick, rapido, a quick smell. Okay, so very good vocabulary. They snuffed, like the verb, they smelled, substantivo, the smell. Okay, so that's the reason they chose not to use smell in the verb, because they have the substantive next with the smell. So just to alternate the vocabulary. Frito, the fried fish, and cock their ears. Okay, so to cock your ear is like to, when you want to listen and you want to pay attention, it's like that action, probably to pay attention, to cock your ear. Not very typical, but it's important to remember, I suppose, in this context for sure. Siren is the same, I think, in Spanish. The noise or the siren in the when you have a big problem for the military, for the war, you have the sirens. Okay, and here's the possessive, so it's the plural, the obras in the plural, and the possession with the apostrophe. Okay, so there's no extra s. Okay, page 5, off day. That's a very good expression. So the opposite is, you have a good day is positive, and the opposite is to have an off day, like a very bad day. And during the pandemic, probably a lot of people had or have a bad day, like an off day. So on, the preposition is positive. Always there's significance with the preposition in English. So, and if you're on, it's positive, and off usually is negative sentiment, negative feeling. So an off day is like a bad day. Okay, so that's different from the next expression. The next expression is a day off is different. So there is a difference for sure. Okay, so to have a day off is like a free day in work. Different completely. So to have a day off is a free day at work, and to have an off day, I think together, yes, when it's this hyphen, that's important as well. It's like a bad day. Very different. Okay, so a bad day and a free day. Important difference. Very interesting. Little detail of English. Slouch, again, is very important vocabulary, typical for the teenagers when they're on the sofa and they're not sitting properly, or they're not sitting correctly. They're slouching, like very lazy in the position of the body on the sofa. It's like the legs everywhere, the arms everywhere, to slouch. Okay, and the substantivo is a slouch, like a lazy person. And specifically the vocabulary here of a slouch is, so you're sure, encorvarse. Interesting. Okay, so good vocabulary. The past simple, sidled away at the approach. I've never seen that word before in my life, to be honest. And just to show you the translation, sidle is, okay, move away. So it's related to the side, al lado, and I think it means to move to move away, move to the side of the street or to the side of the road. Yes, because the officer, the police officer, is approaching, and he moved away. Okay. Lose face, perder cara, probably the same in Spanish, like reputation or to be embarrassed, you lose face. Mistress, okay, so good vocabulary. A mistress, I think amante in Espanol, a mistress, and plural. Okay, so mistress, I think like a lover, as they say in Spanish, a mistress. Amante querida. Okay, and that's the good vocabulary there. Crop is like a collection, so there's a crop of minor charges. A crop is very important vocabulary, like small collection, typical from agriculture. Really, it's from agriculture. The crop is the collection of the products in agriculture. So a crop of problems is a small, and very similar, we will see a batch is a synonym. Okay, so a batch is a synonym. And I think in the text we have the batch also. So here they say a crop is like a collection, half light in relation to the day. So not bright, not dark. It's kind of half light, not typical, but important to understand as well. The verb to whine is like to complain. Okay, so to whine is to complain, but it's more related to the noise. Typically it's related to the noise when you're complaining. Maybe the animal is whining. And just to get you the translation here, gimotear, Yeah, your are, but in very sad, very negative situations. So here's the substantivo, the wine of the Malingerer. Again, I've never seen this word before in my life, so it's definitely not necessary to understand everything. Okay, so you can see fake. That's very important in English, to fake the verb, okay? And the substantive is, sorry, the adjective is fake also. So yes, it's not necessary to understand everything in the text. Your job is really to identify the answers. And I hope you can find the answers in this text with the help of the explanations of the grammar and the vocabulary. Glum, as I said, is very sad, it's like grim, very glum, very depressed. Very good vocabulary. Very dark, very depressed. With a grievance, okay, and a grievance, you saw in the word reference, a complaint, okay, so it's a synonym of a complaint. A grievance is like a problem or a complaint. And there is a verb to grieve in relation to death or to mourn. When somebody dies and you're very sad, you need time to grieve or you need time to mourn, okay, to be very, very sad. And a grievance is, in this context, a complaint, okay? This is interesting, and I want to explain why it's I and not me. So hopefully you understand why it's I and not me. So basically, when it's the subject, okay, so it's related to the verb. For example, I drink, you drink. So you and I, because you have the verb drink, it's necessary you and I. You and I drink, okay, and that's the reason it's necessary. I is the subject, and here it's probably related to the verb. And I, who by every prospect should be put, who could do, so who by every precept should, okay, so it's connected to the verb should. I, in this context, is connected to the verb should. And that's the reason, because it's the verb, you need the subject, and the subject is I, not me. Okay, I think me is the object, possibly. The pronunciation of this is kernel, so very strange pronunciation in English. So you can see it sounds like colonel, but no, it's false, okay? So the correct pronunciation is kernel, like an R, a kernel, okay? So correct pronunciation is kernel. Under whom, so there's a small difference between who and whom, and I think when it's the object of the sentence, we use whom. And when it's the subject of the next clausula, I think it's used who. So we can look at that in the future, but if you want to do some little study yourself, I would recommend definitely to analyze the difference between who and whom. Okay, but I think this one is more for the object of the sentence. And here, under whom, and in this case, I don't think it's a big problem. The two are flexible and possible here. In this case, we had formed out of sight, fuera de vista. Succeed is very important and very interesting. So the verb is to succeed. And in exams, you can see this verb, very typical. And it's also the structure, to succeed in doing, to succeed in the ing. For example, you succeeded in winning, you succeeded in getting, you succeeded in going. So succeed in is with the ing, very typical. Okay, but here it's just the verb succeeded. And the adjective is successful. Adjective, and the substantivo is success. The noun. Okay, so very interesting, very important. The success is the substantive, and the adjective is successful, and the verb is to succeed, typical with in. Important to remember in all the exams. Another is for singular, remember, another regiment, but other for plural, regiments. So another is singular, another regiment. There were few left, so casi nunca. There were few left. The officer's mess. So I think in this context, for the vocabulary very specific for the military, I think the mess is the office or the area. So in other situations, a mess is like un lío, like very dirty, very untidy. But in this situation, I think it's the specific vocabulary for the military, for the office of the officer, for the colonel, or the area in the military, okay? A batch is like a crop. So we saw before a batch and a crop. I'll show you in the document here. A crop is a crop, or a batch is a small collection, and a batch of volunteers, a group of volunteers. Very, very good vocabulary. Outbreak, brote, outbreak of war. La brote de guerra. Very good vocabulary. And for the coronavirus, the outbreak of the virus, the brote. One way and another, again, that's a good expression. Normally we say one way or the other. Sorry, I'll go back there. There is an expression in English, one way or the other. But in this situation, it's similar. So I will do it one way or the other. So that means you will do it algo manera. You don't know exactly how you will do it, but definitely you will do it. Okay, so you will do it one way or the other. Very good expression. And here it's a variation of it, one way and another. Invalided out, so it's a phrasal verb in this situation. It's not typical, but an invalid is the person who has no capacity to move or injured in the military. And in this case, they're creative with the verb invalided out. So they left the military because they had an injury or a problem. Again, other for plural, other battalions. So that's a good example. Another for singular, another battalion, but other battalions. Very important. Posted in this situation is like NVR. Think of Facebook, Twitter. You post a comment and it's like NVR. And probably from the correos, you have the post. So it's probably all connected. To post a letter is like to send a letter. And here, in relation to the position of your job, you are posted to another country. You are sent to another country, okay? Had got himself killed, that's a very advanced structure. In the previous pages, we saw another very advanced structure, and this is the second very advanced and interesting structure. To get yourself hurt or to get yourself injured is to cause the problem yourself, okay? So to get yourself hurt or injured is the same as, this is the past perfect. In the text, it's the past perfect. But here, it's the infinitive, to get yourself hurt or to get yourself injured. Okay, and that's the past perfect, had got himself. Court-martialed is very specific vocabulary for the military. And you can see here, okay, consejo, but it's the tribunal, the military tribunal. When you have the soldier has to go to the military tribunal. That's the verb of court-martialed. Was drunk. This is an example of the passive. Okay, so the soldiers drank and the beer. So the soldiers drank the beer is the active, and the beer was drunk is the passive. Okay, and remember the verb is to drink, drank, drunk. Drink is the verb, drank is the past, and drunk is the participle. Okay, so just remember, always very important. Very, very good. And as had never been, good combination, good simple structure, but a little creative also, so important to consider. Stiff is rígido. If you're very stiff, rígido. Rigid in English, very rigid or very rígido. Sorry for my pronunciation in Spanish. And weary is like tired. If you're very weary, you're very cansado, very tired. Very good vocabulary. So everybody knows tired, but weary is more advanced and better for a higher level. To go out, salir. Oh, so this is related to Spanish, propriar. So I developed ownership. So the verb is to own. Verb, owner is the person. Maybe ownership is the substantivo. Sorry, with the screen, the ownership is the substantivo. And in this situation, I think it's more similar to ownership. Proprietary claims. So it's an adjective here. Proprietary claims that you own, you claim. Reclamar or acclamar. Fretful is very advanced, very good vocabulary. To increase your vocabulary, there's a very good verb to fret, and it's like to worry. Okay, so to fret is the same as to worry. Again, obviously the majority of the people know worry, but an extra level of vocabulary would be to fret. And then an adjective is very fretful, like worried. All right, very interesting and very worth remembering. And before réveiller, I think that's a French word, originally a French word that's introduced in English, I think for the morning in relation to the alarm clock. And here you can see specifically the wake up signal in the military. So very specific for the military. Interesting article because specific vocabulary. And then the final page, again, died is the verb in the past simple. Lay awake is the verb entumbarse. Again, we saw réveiller. Det is the substantivo. The hut we saw already. To gaze is similar to fijar. To gaze is fijar, but more maybe romantic. And there's another verb in English, to stare, is maybe more rude. And very good vocabulary. To gaze, fijar, into the complete blackness, obviously substantivo. Amid is in the middle. Breathe, you have to be very careful because the verb is to breathe. El verbo, to breathe. Substantivo, breath. And the gerundio, breathing. So very delicate, very detailed. The verb to breathe, substantivo, the breath, and gerundio, breathing. Very important. Okay, and here's the substantivo, deep breathing activity. And mutter. Okay, so let me write to breathe. The breath, and then there's a verb to mutter, and it's like to speak under your respiration, to speak under your breath. To mutter is very good vocabulary, and specifically hablar entre dientes, to speak under your teeth. Yeah, so you're maybe complaining, you're not happy, it's difficult to understand the person because they are muttering, possible with a child or of course with an adult as well. Muttering. And here again, other for plural. Turning over is like in your mind, you're contemplating, you're thinking. Overstaying, again, is very important. We saw overeat, oversleep, overdrink. Over here is different, but overstay is the same. Excessive, quedar demasiado, to stay too much in a place. Overstay your welcome is a good expression. Let me write at the end. To overstay your welcome, or to outstay your welcome. Very similar and a synonym as well. Okay, good. And yeah, batch is like the crop. Due is expected. So if you're due, it's the same as expected. Okay, expected to return that day. Trust, important. So the verb is to trust a person. I trust you, you trust me, I trust him. In the verb, trust. But in Spanish, you have el verbo con en. And that's the difference in Spanish and English. So, confiar en alguien, con en in español, pero no en inglés, con el verbo. Important, okay? And the substantivo in English, tenemos en in substantivo. For example, to have, tener confianza en is possible in English. I have trust, I have confidence in you. Okay? So that's the difference. Very important to remember. And that's the reason I identify here, trust. Again, lay is the same. Aghast, I was gassed. Aghast, I was shocked. I was surprised. I was so shocked. Aghast. Okay, so let me write here. It's good vocabulary. Shocked, surprised. I was aghast. Set things right is very interesting as well. Como poner cosas correcto. So set the table is like poner cosas en el table. To set the table is como hacer, to make the table. And then to set things right or correct, or to, not derecho, es más correcto. Okay. Self-reproach. So let me get the translation for that. Self-reproach. So you're very, very sure. Okay. Reproach, sorry, is the same in Spanish, practically the same. The whole is like the total or complete. Drab is very good vocabulary, similar to grim, similar to glum. Drab, very good vocabulary. So grim, glum, drab, very dark, very depressing, very sad. Compass is the typical object in school to draw the circle. That's the compass. And when you're in navigation, you have the compass to look for direction. To be through it is like sobrevivir. If you have been through the situation, you have survived the situation. You have experienced and survived the situation, to be through it. Again, I is the same because it's the verb. So the army and I is related to the verb. And in this context, it's previous verb, had been through. So the army had been through it and I had been through it. So in this case, it's related to the verb at the back. Courtship. Okay, so there's a verb in English to court. If in romantic situation, if you court a person, it's like salir con alguien, like to date. Okay, so to court a person in the verbal, it'll be difficult to find here in the text, I think. Lovers dating, estar saliendo, noviar, ser novios. Okay, so courtship is the period of time that you are interacting with the other person, or in business also it's the same. And in this situation, it could be the military. So we need to be careful. I think in this situation, the court is like the tribunal in this situation. Chill is like very cold. The very cold is very chill. So chilly, let me write. Chilly is cold, and the chill is the substantivo. And to go on is to continue. So I would continue, I would go on. Acquiesce is very hard, but I hope in Spanish it is similar. ACU, so just so we're clear. UI. Okay, perfect. So here it's to consent. I think, just let me check. Acquiescence, I think it's a substantivo in this case. Yeah, it will be the substantivo. So just to double check. This was the correct word, consent. So it's a substantivo. And nearby is cerca. So the near and nearby are practically the same. For position, the close, cerca. Haversack is the type of bolsa in the military for the back, like a backpack, or a backpack, but a haversack is the type of bag for the military, I think. Unexpired, so to expire is caducar. To expire is caducar. But unexpired is the adjective in the negative. So sin caducar, or no caducar in the negativo. Okay, pack is el verbo. Very interesting. In Espanol, hacer la maleta. In English, we say to pack my bag. So hacer is to make, but the context, normal, to pack your bag in English. Okay, so to pack, and this is exactly the same, to pack the bag, to pack the haversack, but also the store is like the tienda company, or the room for in the military where they put all the products. That's the store, the stock. Okay, so it was packed, it was lleno, it was full. Kit bag is the material, or the bag with all the material that you need. Equipment, similar to the equipment bag. Piled is pilar, pila. So it's the pile, and it's the verb as well, to pile. It's to poner mucho cosas. Okay, and wildly is incredibly. So in this situation, exhilarating, incredibly exhilarating. Wildly, so just so you're so clear, is salvajemente, incontroladamente. Okay, so wildly exhilarating. And a badge is in relation to the military. You have a badge on your football jersey, you have a badge on your shoulder for the military, and a badge specifically, so you're sure, is un chapa prendedor. Okay, well done. That is very interesting text, very high level, C1. But remember, again, exactly the same. It's not necessary to understand everything in the exam. Your job only is to identify the answer and to find the correct answer and to look for the vocabulary with the clue for the possible answer. It's not your job to understand everything. So don't worry too much if you don't understand everything. But it's interesting to analyze the vocabulary and the grammar, in my opinion, and for this video and for this purpose. Okay, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, you can put them on the video and in the comments on Facebook and YouTube or wherever. And I hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much, and talk to you soon. Bye.